you so much for coming back to the Dalitalks show. I'm really excited to have my guest Tunisia today because she's not just an amazing woman, but she is a doctor of philosophy.
Yay.
Yeah, we had great conversations in person. I was like, Tunisia, you have to come onto my podcast. So, welcome to the show, Tunisia. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm well. It's Friday, so that's always a win.
Right?
How are you today?
I'm hungry. Cold.
Cold?
Yeah, it's my basement, and Henry, my husband, he likes to freeze me to death.
Oh, okay. So I was like, it's not cold today, but I understand that.
Yeah. No, but it keeps me awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. We had this conversation a while back, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're talking about all these things that I've had to learn over the years as an adult, and I carried some shame for a long time because I was like, I should have known that, but then I look back and I think, well, how could I have known that?
Right.
My mother didn't know, and we're immigrants, and assimilating to the United States was challenging, and you just don't know what to ask. So let's talk a little bit about your background. So talk a little bit, how did you grow up, and how did you become interested in the study that you went for?
Yeah, so I grew up, I'm from a small town called Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and with that, majority of the population is white people. So I just remember in second grade, every day I got off the bus, a white girl would say, "Bye, nigger." And I didn't know what she was saying. So I would say like, "Bye." And then so I'm like, wait a second. And so then I told my mom, and my mom came to the school, and that probably happened about 3 or 4 different times throughout growing up where I experienced that, and my mother's at the school. I came from a toxic family. I grew up with substance abuse and domestic violence. My father is an alcoholic, and when he was drunk, he would physically abuse my mother. And I felt like it's just interesting how you get placed in these roles, and then you see that you're in those roles as you grow up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like the protector. I was the one that would go in, leave her alone. And I do have a brother. He's 2 years older than me, but he didn't really say anything or do anything. And like I stopped going to people's houses or things like that because I felt like I couldn't leave her. And so I think that has impacted me on friends because I didn't really have them growing up. But now that I'm an adult, I realized the significance of having friends and cultivating those relationships. As you know, like you're a married mommy, and it's just like, I need a break from all of this, and I need to talk to real women who can relate, So, so I just feel, I don't know where my drive came from, to be honest with you. Well, you know what? Let me think about that. I kind of do, because I was considered the good kid. So there wasn't a lot of energy placed in me. And so I think my drive initially was, if I do all these good things, that one of them will notice and tell me good job. So words of affirmation is my love language, and it happened until I started this PhD program, and I went like a downhill spiral with my mental health. So I was diagnosed with, and you know what, this is really me being transparent, and I don't tell a lot of people. So this is a big step for me.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. In 2018, I did not fully start accepting it myself until 2021. And I must be so comfortable with you, even though you're recording this and putting it for people to say, because I don't say it, because there's shame that kind of comes with that for me, with mental health, because of the stigma, especially in the Black community. And, there's levels to mental health. If you have anxiety or depression, okay. But when you say you have any form of bipolar, it's like, whoa, and then if you're schizophrenic, then that's the top of the top,
Right.
So, that has been just something that I've been dealing with. I take medicine every single day, but I am in such a better place, like for me, you know? But that's why I feel like the PhD program has stretched me to my max, not just even as a scholar, but personally, and dealing with those things that I either didn't know fully existed or I knew and I just didn't confront them at the time. So I know that's a lot. I don't know if I went off.
It's good. Thank you so much for being transparent and vulnerable, because that takes a lot of courage. I know I can relate to that because I was diagnosed with PTSD for a long time, and I too was in denial. And I thought, no, that's just, we go through things. And like you said, in the Black community, it's pretty stigmatized, and Latino community is pretty stigmatized still, but because of people like you and me who have the conversation openly, that's changing. And, now I can say I don't have as much shame, although it's there. I still feel it sometimes depending on who I'm sharing with.
Right.
I know the person's very adamant about believing that mental health is a thing, a real thing that people struggle with, and I'll feel apprehensive or sometimes a little shame, but it's taken some work. And I think that a lot of people have something. I mean, if you, like, when I go to the doctor and they ask, well, is there a history of any mental health? I'm like, well, doesn't everybody? I mean, we all go through something at one point or another. And so I kind of,
that's so funny you say that. And I don't know if this but I feel like I can say stuff because I do have like mental health issues. So I'm like, everybody is some level of crazy. Like some people might be down here, some people may be up here, but I'm totally with you. Like everybody is some level of crazy. And like you said, but certain situations, like I go to therapy. I feel like that's important, I'm just trying to take care of it the healthy way, because I don't feel like I always did. And I can tell that I am in a better place now that I'm doing it that way, if that makes sense. But I feel like after I graduate, graduation's officially next Wednesday. So everybody who's watching, I officially became Dr. April 5th, the day after my birthday. And then it was just like instantly, but I feel like it's my obligation to be more transparent to people, because even if individuals aren't sharing their struggles, that doesn't mean that what I'm saying is not hitting them in some type of way. It's not influencing them in some type of way. Isn't, encouraging them in some type of way. And I feel like, I don't know why that switched for me, like once I got this degree, but I feel like I have a responsibility.
So let's dive. Okay, so there's two things I want to do. First, I want to talk a little bit about what is bipolar disorder, and then the specific area of philosophy that you went for. So first, let's break it down because I think a lot of people still don't understand what bipolar disorder is. So can you break it down?
Yes.
Very elementary.
So it's interesting though, because I'm still trying to figure it out. So, because again, it took me a while to accept it. So I was kind of being ignorant with it, if that makes sense. I didn't want to look up anything so, there's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2. So bipolar 1 is more like manic episodes. And then typically, like if you have bipolar 1 and you're not taking medication, it can really hinder you from just even doing day-to-day stuff if you're having a manic episode. But bipolar 2 is more of the depressive end of it. It's not really, they call it hypomanic. And so with bipolar 2, typically you can still function throughout the day. And so like what happened, I've gotten to a good place. But I started taking, this is probably too much information, but I started taking birth control for my cycles, and my doctor prescribed it, and it was kind of like quick. And I don't think she fully looked at my chart at the time, and I don't blame her for that, and so I started taking it, and probably like week 2, I started feeling a little off. So for me, like, I also struggle too, because my moods don't fluctuate. So I'm like, I don't switch moods like that, because that's what people typically think, but it can manifest in other ways. Like, my anxiety sometimes is through the roof, like uncontrollable. So that could be part of like bipolar too. And just, again, like those really, really low places, my mind, I have racing thoughts. Like, I describe it as, because I ran track. So it's like, I'm like, it's a track meet in my head. Like, it's just constant running. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, it's not like I'm thinking about anything in particular. It just feels like my brain is just like racing. Irritability is part of it. And that's like, again, with me going through therapy and doing those things, I can recognize the signs now. And so I looked in the mirror when I was 2 weeks in. I was like, something doesn't feel right. Like, I could tell the shift in my body. So then I looked it up, and it says that birth control can make your medicine 60% less effective. Oh. And, even with that was heartbreaking for me, because I cried a little bit. I cry a lot when I talk about it. It's like, I have to choose one or the other. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I either have these painful cycles, or I could feel like you know what I mean? Like, so that struggles for me, because it's like, why can't I just have both? Why can't I just take my medicine and I feel like I'm even, and take these birth control pills so I don't feel like my cycles are as painful? But my medicine, my bipolar medicine, is always superseding everything else. I have to choose that first. Okay. And so that's a struggle for me. Because, like, for an example, like with the irritability and just the racing thoughts, like, it's hard to describe, but sometimes you feel like you're losing it inside, but nobody else can tell. Mm-hmm. Like, but it just feels like you are losing it inside. So it's just kind of like an internal battle that you're feeling. And I don't know, I had a moment where, like, I had to recognize that my medicine, like, decreases the symptoms, but it doesn't fully cure it per se. And that was a struggle for me, coming to that realization too.
Okay. Wow. So, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. I know that it can be hard to
Isn't it Mental Health Month too? Awareness Month?
Actually, I think it is. Yeah. No, but I'm pretty sure that you're helping a lot of people, because I'm sure that you're not the first one, or to deny it at first. You're like, no, I can manage this. I can do it. Because I was like that too. And I had like night terrors and things like that. And the doctor kept asking me for if I wanted medicine. I was like, no, I don't. I can do this. I can do this on my own. And then after years, I was like, okay, give me the dark medicine. Yeah. And then, starting with low dose, just listening, because not just gonna go full fledged on something really high, and like, that doesn't work. We'll increase it a little bit, but you have a time period to test it out. It's not just like 1 day or 2 or whatever. So I'm glad that you were able to get help. And it's crazy that birth control fluctuated, threw you off. Yeah. And, some people might be thinking, well, maybe it was the birth control that triggered it. Maybe it was the type, because, different birth controls give different effects on not everybody's the same. But it looks like you've already gone through that process, and you figured out what works for you. And I'm very glad that helped you. And here you are. Thank you. Now your PhD. And so now let's talk about that PhD. What, tell us, what made you decide to actually go for that PhD? Because a lot of people, that's a big, huge investment, and it's a ton of dedication. I think more than a full-time job. It's like full-time and overtime.
Yes, because it's like you're constantly doing something. It's so interesting, because, to be honest with you, I don't remember what made me initially. I was working on my master's degree, and it was like 2008, because I graduated in 2009. I told my advisor, I said I wanted to get into the language literacy and culture program at UMBC. And he said, that's a hard program to get into. And you know what? I didn't remember that conversation until like years later. And so when I started looking up, I'm like, okay, I think I want to start working on this PhD. So I actually applied to the program to be in the 2015 cohort, and I was waitlisted. and I didn't get in. And so I sent an email to the professors, like anybody I could find on the website. And I asked them, I said, hey, I was waitlisted. What can I do to better my chances? And Dr. Beverly Bickle, who I absolutely love. And it's so funny because, side note, I do affirmations with my kids every morning. I bought them like kid affirmations. So we pull them while we wait for the bell to ring for my son to go into school. So I have to pull some too. And one of them was, I am happy. And it said, list 3 things that make you happy. So I'm like saying stuff to my daughter and she said, Dr. B. And I was like, why would you say her? And she was just like, I see your face when you talk about her. She was the professor that responded. She scheduled a meeting with me and I knew I wanted to do something in the area of like Black hair, Black body politics. So she scheduled a meeting with one of the they had like affiliate professors at the time. So if you're in other programs, because it's an interdisciplinary program, then, you connect with those people. So she scheduled a meeting with Dr. Kimberly Moffitt and we talked and I applied and I got in for the 2016 cohort, C19. And so here we are. I worked full time the whole way through it, still working full time. I am married. I have 2 children. 13 and 10. I said I've been in school most of my son's life. So because, I started in 2016 and then finished in 2022. But as I got into the program even more, it's just like, it's so interesting because I get to pick what I want to study, and a lot of times it's kind of like, if you don't pick an interdisciplinary program, it's kind of like, okay, it's psychology. Okay, it's this, but this program was perfect for me because I got to pick which direction that I wanted to go in. And based on my own personal experiences with hair, I used to wear weave and I used to straighten my hair. And in 2014, and I think this is what made me think of the topic that I wanted to do. In 2014, I noticed my hair was falling out. So I went to the dermatologist. I was getting scalp injections. They were giving me this stuff. And then till I got like a biopsy done and I have alopecia and it's scarring alopecia. So in some spots, there's a chance that it won't grow back. But when I'm really stressed, it gets worse. And I had to go natural. And oftentimes Black women, when they want to go natural, it's like a choice. For me, I felt like it wasn't a choice. So I really, really struggled with that. And my husband was super supportive because I had to I had like a little fro. And I was sitting on the bed and he came home and he looked at me and he said, it looks good. And I just started crying, So that kind of is what started my interest more because I was ignorant about Black hair. And, my mom put chemicals in my hair at a young age. There was not a conversation. It was just like, okay, you're getting this perm, But me as a mother, I give my daughter more of a choice. She has natural hair. We have those conversations versus I didn't have those conversations then, So I was just like, okay, this is what my focus area. And then I noticed when I was reading research studies and Black women were like the participants, they stated that Black men influence how they wear their hair, but they didn't say what they were saying. They didn't go into more detail about it. And I was like, I wonder what this really looks like. I have a husband that's supportive, but I've also heard Black men talk negatively about Black women and their hair. So let me do my focus on the Black men and see what they really think or what they're saying and things of that nature. So we went that route. There is very, 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 very few research coming from the Black man's perspective. So I'm happy that I was able to really fill a gap there. And part of my research, kind of what we discussed earlier, yes, it's about hair, but it's more of like an external thing that we see, but it's really internal issues. So let's kind of talk about that, And so then I also kind of looked at it as to how this external thing may impact the Black man and Black woman's relationship dynamics. So, some of the participants shared that some of their friends, it wasn't them in particular, but shared that some of their friends said that they won't date Black women. And these are Black men. And one of the reasons is because of their hair. They listed other stuff, but hair is a reason because they don't want to deal with it.
Wow. Okay. So eye-opening. So Ooh, there's a lot here. I love it
Mhm.
because you're right. I don't think I ever read anything about the perspective of men and Black women's hair. But now thinking about it, everything that I've observed, I'm like, okay, yeah, I see how uninvolved they can be, but
Mhm.
also how involved in the criticism type.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing too is that you remind me, and you and I had this conversation when we first met, that I was so ignorant about hair. I mean, especially Black people's hair, because
Mhm.
I'm Latina and I grew up in a predominantly Latino
Mhm.
community. So from my perspective, arriving to the U.S. from Nicaragua, I remember noticing that Black girls always had got their hair done, and
Mhm.
they were putting something in their hair. I thought it was like gel or something, right? And I thought it was from a standpoint of vanity, of just trying to look nice, because
Mhm.
like in Latinas too, sometimes like they don't walk out the house unless their hair is all done up and they're all dressed really cute and stuff. And that's the culture. You just don't walk
Mhm.
out the house like that. So I thought, okay, well, but they do it like every week or every 2 weeks. I thought, from this kid that came to the US and just trying
Mhm.
to observe everything. And then I joined the military, and I'm thrown in with a whole bunch of girls, and I'm starting to notice
Right.
that even I don't know about my own hair. And actually,
Mm.
even now, I'm like, I can't get to like really, I can't get my curls to really be highlighted as well
Mhm.
as they should be. And I'm just
Mhm.
now learning about like certain products and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But the thing that happened to me was I had a roommate in my first duty station, and she'd always put that chemical in her head, and then she would talk about how it burned. And then,
Mm.
and that's how I became educated about, oh, this is not a beauty thing.
Yeah.
It's a health thing.
Yeah.
And then about her hair breaking. And I'm like, what do you
Mhm.
mean your hair is breaking? She's like, yeah, I'm really stressed out, so my hair is breaking. And she would show me like on the bed, on the pillowcase or
Mhm.
whatever. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so eye-opening.
Yeah. And, again, talking about internally, and it goes back to slavery. And then it goes, with slavery, then it was just like the darker your skin, it was just like you were seen just as, like the scum of the earth pretty much. And so then it goes on, like those who had straighter hair, who had lighter skin, they were treated a little bit better than those with darker skin and more coarse hair. And then that then moved on to the Black community, like with certain organizations. I read that certain churches, if they had a comb and they could not get your hair, like your hair would not go smoothly through the comb, you can't go to church. And so again, so my focus is more on how we are perpetuating those behaviors within the Black community, and even like down to our children.
Mhm.
And how, especially the girls, how they hear that stuff so early. And even some of the Black men shared that oftentimes they heard negative talk from their peers when they were growing up. And it was from one Black girl to another talking negatively about each other's hair if there was an argument. And so, so just the way that back in the day, in the past, influences the Black community, and then how some of our Black men still think that straighter hair is better or lighter skin is better, because you can't really separate the two. A lot of times your hair and your skin go together, and so we still see that, and it's unfortunate. And my goal is to kind of make people more aware so that they can be more intentional about how we treat each other within the Black community. Because I feel like we can't have a united front or have an expectation for those outside of our race to treat us a certain way when we're not doing that to each other, and that's just important to me.
Mm-hmm. So what did the research look like? Because you had to talk to men about this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Were they kind of adamant about answering questions, or, what did that look like?
Yeah. So for the in-depth interviews, so I did in-depth interviews and I did focus groups. So I did a pilot study for both, just to like test it out to make sure I was asking the right questions, to see how they responded. So I did a total of 8 in-depth interviews, and then I did 4 focus groups. And the in-depth interviews, some of them started off, they were a little hesitant But for the focus groups, no. But I think it's because it was a group of them, so they could feed off of each other, you know? Some of the in-depth interview participants, I had to say, like, say whatever you want. It's okay. Like, judgment-free zone here. I want to know your authentic feelings because that defeats the purpose of my research, right? But some of them were like, they were really open. Like once we got started, they were really, really open. I asked them questions about their own hair too, because I was hoping that they would make a connection between their own struggles, you know, because a lot of times people can't relate to you until they've had a similar experience. And I was hoping to make that connection, and some of them did, but others were like, no. And it was interesting too, because they were a little more knowledgeable than I thought. So they would say stuff like, yeah, I mean, I understand why, but I don't like it. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very surprised about that. And some of the Black men, they did share, and they said that they don't feel that Black men support Black women as much. And they said that because our hair is such a huge part of our identity, even just having those conversations with a Black woman is still supporting her in a sense. So a couple of them said that, and I was really, really impressed by those responses. And just going back to what you said, like, I think overall, natural for any race, women, it's something that we have to be more mindful of than men do. But the impact for Black women is because when we look at the hierarchy, we're at the bottom, you know? So it's just like we already have these negative forces against us. So it makes us have to do it more, take care of our hair more, present ourselves a certain way more than some others. And then, so when you feel like you don't have the support from, you know, Black men, it just makes it even more challenging. So again, the reason I just want to make it more of a conversation, make people more aware so they're more intentional about what they're saying, even to kids, because that starts off early, you know?
Yeah. So, okay. So if, you know, I don't even know what to ask now because there's so much in my mind. So many questions. Okay. So what would you recommend to parents who have young girls with textured hair?
Affirmation, affirm those little girls. Like, and even like, not even with girls, like do it with your sons and encourage them to encourage, like, you know, if they have little sisters or things of that nature. Because my son, he is so good about that. So if my daughter comes home or when I come home, he'll say, Trini, I like your hair, you know. And then even this morning, he was like playing with my hair and he said, Mommy, are you always going to have locks? And I was just like, probably. And I was just like, is that okay? And he was like, yeah. So I think it's kind of like twofold. You need to have those conversations with your sons as well, but then also with your daughter so that they grow up to affirm the females in their lives as well. You know, so it's just so interesting. It's so different from my childhood.
Yeah.
Like me and my daughter having those conversations, giving her more freedom to make choices because I didn't have a choice. It was just kind of like, this is how you're getting your hair done and this is what it is. And I think a lot of that contributed, like your roommate, to the damage that I had with my hair, you know? So it's very, very important to start that at a young age.
I agree because, you know, thinking back, I've always had the curiosity of, say, like dyeing my hair. But for some reason, I don't know where I learned this. I think I might have seen my mom just dye her hair too much. And I remember it being dry, really dry, like the ends. And I was like, okay, it's a new color, but it looks pretty bad. And I didn't want to be mean. I was like, oh, it looks fine because she was happy with it. So you just, you know, you're not going to break your mom's heart. So, but without her saying anything, I always thought, ooh, dyes don't seem to be good for your hair. And I remember she permed my hair once because she was perming hers. Did
you have a choice?
I think I did kind of. She was like, come on. She was kind of trying to have like a girl thing together, you know, a mom and daughter thing. And I was like, okay, fine. Oh my God. Biggest mistake ever. I look like a chia pet. Okay. Because I do have curly hair. Like right now, I was trying to straighten it because I wanted something different. I hadn't done it for a while, but my hair is actually really curly. Okay. So I don't know why I decided to try it. Maybe because I was like, yeah, sure, it's something that we can do together. And I hated it. And I remember feeling so fake, but that was my first time. But that stayed with me because I remember like there was a certain smell to the chemical that didn't sit well for me. And I think I was around 10 or 11 years old when this happened. So now as a mother of two girls, they've been telling me, begging for years to please let them dye their hair. And I've been avoiding it until then my husband went and said, oh, they're going to try this temporary hair dye. And it wasn't. They all were in cahoots together and lied to me. And then they ended up dyeing it. And I was upset about it because I was like, no, they have like their nice virgin hair. It's so beautiful.
Right.
I always let them do different haircuts. I'm like, haircuts galore. Like, whatever you want. They had a side shave. They had a two side shave. They had like designs. Whatever, but I do give them that option of, hey, what do you want to do? Minus the whole, chemicals. And it's hard for these teens to understand why I don't want them to do that. But I also want them to have a choice. It's so hard because, they're like, it's okay. We're going to die from something anyway. I'm like, no. So did you get to do any studies on any products that have a high content of certain chemicals that are impacting the Black community, with their hair or anything like that?
I haven't done any research looking at that. No, that's not something that I've done. But, they talk a lot about perms, that are used to straighten hair. And actually the sales of perms have gone down because a lot of women it's more of becoming like educated, so a lot of women are going natural. But and I don't know if like Chris Rock, I know he was like the whole thing, and even with that situation, I removed Will Smith from it again because I took it personally because I have alopecia, and removing Will Smith from it, his joke to Jada was not okay. And the thing about Chris Rock, he created a documentary called Good Hair. And he went around, and what triggered that for him was his daughter told him that she wanted good hair, which was straighter hair, less textured hair. So for me, if he didn't know about Jada, he knew better.
Right.
If that makes sense. And if Will Smith wouldn't have done what he did, it wouldn't even be a conversation anymore. People would have overlooked that piece. And I've heard people say, and Black men say, it's not that big of a deal. What he said wasn't that big of a deal. So again, it's showing that lack of empathy and that lack of support from Black men, because just because she openly talks about it, that could be part of her way to adjust, but that doesn't mean that she's fully comfortable. Just like I openly shared, which I'm so surprised about my mental health, I'm still not all the way comfortable about it. So if somebody, if you would have trash talked me, which you wouldn't, but I'm just saying after I shared that, that would have negatively impacted me, So with that, like, I know that with perms, and I know like parabands and anything that has those type of things in it are bad for your hair, but I have not specifically done research on products themselves.
Yeah, I've tried to do that because I'm always trying to educate myself. And I've had this conversation with some of my Black friends because it's just one of those things that we end up talking about. And one of the things that I've seen is that youth are more concerned now about, instead of going to those, chemical-based products, they're trying to go with more organic things and things like that.
Right.
And, or wear their hair as natural as possible. But I know that can be very hard because of the whole hair and body politics, especially at schools and work.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about your research? Did men understand that part of the employment part with women?
And it's funny that you said that was one of those things. I understand, but a lot of them said that they did not like weave. They did not like fake hair. They said that if they saw a Black woman with fake hair, they took it as her being less authentic. her not being her true self, who is she trying to be, those type of comments. But and they said, we understand if she's trying to grow like in corporate America with her job and things of that nature, you have to present yourself a certain way. Again, a lot of them said that, but then they said, I don't like it. So it's like they understood, but they said they didn't like it. So some of them showed empathy, but others, it was like, I get it, but I still don't like it. Again, for me, a lack of support in a sense. And that's like, go ahead.
Sorry. So was there anything you found there that would help them gain that empathy and give that support?
I think what happened, actually, as I asked more questions, some of them at the end said it, like, at the very end, a lot of them said, this made me think. One of them said, I just thought hair was hair. But now that we had this conversation, I realize it's deeper than that. So even if they made those comments along the way, wrapping it up towards the end, a lot of them had the aha moment, which again, that's what I wanted. I created a transformative statement, not just like my research question, but I wanted it to impact people personally so that they can go, move forward, think about it, and be intentional as to what we're saying to people, and how, what is it? Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a lie. Yeah. Words are very hurtful and people internalize those words, and it can really impact somebody from their day-to-day lives. So that's like a major part of my research too, just being more mindful and knowing that things that you say negatively, whether it be you're criticizing somebody's hair, or positively if you're like embracing somebody's hair and complimenting them, that has an impact.
So what about the boys? Like, did they have an aha moment about either their own hair or any differences that they saw with their boys' hairs versus their daughters?
One of them said actually that his son has like locks, and they're like dreads. Like mine are sister locks, but his are like Bob Marley, and he said that, and he has 2 daughters. And he said that, while I was asking questions, and he had a moment too. And he said that he's not too concerned about his son, but he worries about his daughters. And it's more of because of his wife's experiences with her mother and how her mother was with her hair, making her get a perm, things of that nature. And again, it's just like, it's not just hair. It is negatively impacting people internally, And so, he said his son, okay, go ahead. But he said, for instance, his daughters, if they're close to other people and he hears hair come up, his ears are like on radar because he does not want anybody to say anything negative about his daughter's hair. But that's something that he feels like he doesn't have to worry about with his son. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just interesting too, because those who had, boys and girls, they said that, the son's not something we have to worry about so much, but the daughter, it is. So they're aware, they're aware.
Wow, this is interesting. And the thing of trying to protect a daughter from hearing negative things about her hair, it's really difficult because while you might have control inside the home, family members sometimes say things without even thinking about what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And that's hard because
absolutely
it happens.
Absolutely. And I do the same thing with my daughter when she's around my mom. And like, because my mom would she would make comments about my hair and, some other people from home, especially like when I was like, I first cut it low and I was trying to grow it out. What are you doing with your hair? Like they would say stuff like that. And my mom would say stuff to my daughter. So it kind of gives you like anxiety. Because we went to my godmom's house and I knew my mom was there. And like, it's just kind of like, they look at you and it's kind of like all this stuff. Like, what are you wearing? Like, why are you doing this? So then they've transferred that to my daughter. And so I just remember, like, I told my husband, I was like, it gives me anxiety, So we walked through the door and literally my godmom and my mom are like standing in front of my daughter like this. So my daughter is in the middle. So it's kind of like, we couldn't even get the whole way through the door. And it's just like this whole critiquing of her. My mom was like, she was on the line, so it wasn't enough for me to, say anything, but I did not leave. I was this close so I could hear everything that they were saying to my daughter.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
It does. And you know what? That when you talk about hair, it's almost like you cannot just not talk about skin color too.
Right.
Because as you were saying that, I'm remembering things that I've heard in my family, and usually they relate the hair to the skin color. And there's a lot of colorism in our communities.
Yeah.
And that too is one of those things I've had to do where I have to pay attention, because I'm like, okay, if I hear somebody say something about, like there was an instance with a family member that was praising my lighter skinned nieces, and my kids are darker. So they were like, oh my gosh, look at her. She's so pretty, and look at her beautiful eyes and her skin. And then my daughters get nothing, no compliments about anything. And as they get older, kids notice these things.
Absolutely.
Right? And same thing about the hair too, like,
absolutely.
Oh, your hair is too frizzy, it's too curly. Oh, but yours is so nice and straight and shiny and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to, what we were saying, like, it just may be these external things, but when you're making comments like that, especially like it hurts us as adults, but as children, because that's when they're developing. And like you said, they remember that stuff. And so I just think that it's important conversations to have and to continue to have without being like offended. Like approaching those who are doing it. Because like you said, I honestly don't think they're even aware. It's what they are taught and what they're accustomed to. But I think it's our job, the ones that are aware, to let them know it's not okay. Like, it's not okay.
So did you happen to have any conversations with the men in regards to like, hey, when you say this, maybe you can change it up like this, like do this versus that, or how to catch yourself, those unconscious negative statements? Right.
Well, no, because I was conducting the research. So I'm pretty much taking it all in. You kind of, when you're doing that, you kind of have to keep your opinions and things of that nature out of it. So I didn't have those conversations with them about it. It was more of me just asking the questions and hearing their responses.
Is that something that you're looking into though, to maybe have some kind of programs or something for men to be able to empathize more and understand about hair more?
So that's one thing that I said, because, oftentimes when people get a PhD, they just want to keep doing research like writing. It's something that I want to do, but I want to create some type of media platform for myself. I don't know what that looks like unless, I get some pointers from you, can help me establish a podcast or just like on YouTube and do like video clips, just like interviewing people, and then that will allow me to have more freedom to do that. Like what you just suggested. Well, what do you think their response would be if you said it this way? Because it's not a research study. In a sense, it's just open conversation and dialogue. Because again, it's just really important to me for people to realize how it impacts their lives personally. Because again, like I could be doing all this writing, but then I have a whole thinking about who has access to information. And that's a big thing for me. So if I'm right, and I am not downing anybody at all who, does research writing, because even with my dissertation, I had the option, I had to pay a little bit more, but I had it open access so that once it's published and posted, whoever looks me up, if you're in school or if you're not, you can see my dissertation. And so oftentimes, if you're writing these articles and things of that nature, it's usually in the academic setting and everybody may not have access to that. And it's important to me for people to have access because I want my research and conversations with people to hit them personally in hopes to make change.
I love that. So is it available now for the public?
I didn't get the email yet to say it was. It gave me the process. It was submitted, but I didn't get the email to say that it was like officially, published and like posted and all of that stuff. Yeah. So I'll let you know.
Yes, please do, because by the time this airs, it will probably have posted by then.
Okay.
So yeah, and I want people to be able to read this. I know not everybody will, because they hear the word dissertation, they're like, ugh. But I'm one of those people who will. Yeah. There are a lot of people out there who want to, because I just feel like this is an ongoing educational thing. Mm-hmm. Can't just stop at one conversation or two.
Right.
And also because there's so many different experiences.
Right.
And we live in a world where diversity is just always going to be part of our society, especially with more technology, more travel. We're going to just have more mixtures of people. Because I remember my friend, one of my friends who we've had this conversation. She asked, well, in Nicaragua, where I'm from, don't you have Black people? And I said, yeah, we do. And it's crazy that maybe because I was so small, I didn't see the difference of the skin color and the hair differences or anything like that until I came to the US. I don't know why. I don't know if maybe it's just the US is more how you treat people. Yeah. But it was definitely something I noticed almost immediately coming to the US. I was like, oh, and what? Black people are like this, and Latinos are like this, and white people are, all these just society-based, ideas. And so that's what I try to do with this podcast, to bring these different perspectives so that we don't end up believing whatever we've been told to believe within our communities, because some people, they never go outside of that community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and you're in the United States. I remember I realized how little I went outside of my city. Until I joined the military. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been sheltered and I didn't even know it.
It's so funny that you said about you didn't realize it until you came to America, because you were not the first person that said that to me, who came from other areas. They said that it was not such a thing until they came to America. And that's just crazy to me, not from just showing how our country is operated, and and just how those things are such, race and all of that are such a huge thing here. And so that's just mind blowing to me.
It is. And, it's not that I'm saying racism or hair politics doesn't exist in Nicaragua. It definitely does. Because when I went back as an adult, I noticed it. But it's just so different. It's not highlighted. It's almost like behind the scenes where we got other things to worry about as everyone, So, yeah. Oh, wow. I love this conversation. Is there... My
time's almost up, isn't it?
It doesn't have to be. No, but is there anything else you'd like to share with us about this topic that you feel is important for people to know?
I do. And, so my area is Black hair and body politics. So we talked about the hair part, and an area that I have become very, very interested in is more of the Black body part. And again, just level of support. And I want to write an article about how Black women are dying while giving birth to children. And again, with the whole just supporting each other, I really equate the healthcare system to Black women the same as the justice system to Black men. But the difference is, because of Privacy Acts, you can't record that in the hospital, and a lot of people are impacted, or more impacted, when they can see things firsthand, when people are recording things that are happening to Black men by police officers. So there could be some of that, but it could also be Black women's ranking on the totem pole. And I feel that, when there are certain situations where Black men, are killed by police officers, oftentimes Black women are on the front line for that. And when we hear about Black women who are dying while giving birth to children, I don't hear Black men having those conversations, and the mortality rate for Black women is insane. And I read an article where it said 65% of those deaths are preventable. It's just the lack of care that they're receiving. And it's just interesting, because now that I'm aware of that, I kind of had a similar situation when I gave birth to my son, but on a much lower scale. But my original OBGYN, she's Asian. And when I had my daughter, one of her patients was, going into labor, they would just call her. But when I had my son, they changed it. So it was whatever doctor was on duty, they would deliver your child. And it was a white man. And so I already knew from my experience with my daughter, my water didn't break with her. Like, they had to break it for me. And so we're in the hospital, and I told them, they're like, well, we'll just give it. I was like, no, you're going to have to break my water. Like, it's not going to break. Oh, we'll just give it a second. And so they came back, and they're like, okay, we're going to have to like break your water. Okay. And so then, like, with my daughter, it was just like, once they broke my water, I was almost ready. And so I told them, I'm like, I'm ready. And they were like, no, you're not ready. And so they left. So then when they came back, I was 10 centimeters plus 1. So I was over 10 centimeters dilated. And then the lady was like, oh, and she was a white nurse. And then the doctor wasn't even in the room. And I was like, is he coming in here? But because then, she's looking at me crazy, like I'm just this angry Black woman. But it was such a bad experience for me. And by that time, the epidural wore off, so I could feel everything. And I'm crying while I'm pushing my son. And then the doctor, he didn't believe me then. And he was like, okay. So he went to stitch me, and I jumped. So then I guess he believed that the epidural wore off. It was just like everything that I said was a lie to them. And I know it's on a much lower scale than, that some Black women are experiencing, but I didn't realize it then. But now that I've become more educated, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of what was happening to me, And I just think it's very, very important because, it's just like, these are women who are carrying babies who are dying. Like, and it's just not okay. And it's just like, the support needs to be there. And, there's power in numbers. So if there's one or two, women saying something, or only the ones that are saying stuff because it happened to them, it's not enough. So it would be really nice to see Black men on the front lines with this issue.
I didn't really even think about that until you mentioned that. I was like, oh yeah, I don't see men getting outraged and protesting for their women. But women are out there defending Black men or Latino men. And your experience at the hospital, man, that's crazy, because I have seen that, situations like that where the doctors, and it has happened to me as well, where I'm telling them, hey, this, and they're just like, no. I'm like, I know my own body very well. So just because you have that MD doesn't mean that you know it better than I do. Right. That's something that I tell people in our Latinx community, because we come from countries where teachers, doctors, lawyers are upheld to this really high, like, I don't know, king's chair. Right. Are taught to not challenge them because they went to school for that. Right. And yet it's your body. It's right. So I always tell them, you have to advocate yourself. Just because a doctor says you have this doesn't mean that you have to really take it at value and then not go get a second opinion or a third or fourth, whatever you need, especially if you have that gut feeling that something's wrong. So one of the things that happened to me was that I was a high risk. So they would send me to Bayview in Baltimore. And I would walk in and say, hi, I'm here for my appointment. And the lady would look at me and she would just say, okay, sign in here. Do you speak Spanish? No, do you speak English? And I was like, what the hell did I just speak to you in? Because
that is crazy.
It's this unconscious bias. Don't understand it. If you point it out, then you're the racist one. Them out, racist. And then one of the things that I noticed was that these white doctors kept asking me what was my birth control plan. And my husband and I had already agreed that we would have 2 kids back to back and then be done. But I never felt safe enough to say that because of the judgment that I felt, right? And I remember I had my first daughter, and the doctor, before, he kept asking me, what's your birth control plan? What do I need to put you on? What is your next step? And I was like, I haven't really thought about it. I haven't decided yet. And then after I had her, like a few hours afterwards, the doctor comes in. And of course, it's another doctor, a white doctor. And he was pretty young. And he says, well, you need to decide because you people tend to have a lot of kids. And I was like, what the hell did he just say? And I was in so much because I had a spinal headache. So I was dealing with that. I was like, oh my God, did I just hear that? And then he walked away. And I'll never forget that. Because people say, oh, that doesn't happen. It's just in your, because, you know, they try to gaslight us that we're the ones who take everything from a defensive stand.
Right.
We're always thinking that people are being racist, but what else is that?
Right. Right.
What is that? What do you call it if it's not racism? Right. So yeah, it happens a lot. And now that my daughter, my 15-year-old, she had her first GYN appointment, and I was like, okay, I need to be there. If you're okay with it, you know, the state of Maryland, they allow them 13 or older to be there by themselves.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, Trinity's not going without me. You're not going without me, baby says. You need a ride.
They have a legal right, and if they know, then you do not go in. You can ask, like, you know, other things, but they don't have to tell you if they go and ask for birth control or have an STD or I don't know. There's limitations.
That's crazy.
It is because you never know. It's good in a way, but it's bad, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I told her, well, make sure, you know, if you're going to go in alone, just like go in first, then I can go in and then we can have a talk, because there's things you need to ask that you probably don't know, like people of color have PCOS a lot more, and it goes undiagnosed. Or endometriosis is and it's not treated because all of the unbiased or the biased science that allows for the less quality healthcare for women of color. Yeah. And so she's listening to me and she's like, really? Still not quite believing it, right? Yeah. And it's another discussion we need to have along with the hair and the body politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot, like even you sharing, like you have to have those conversations. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate, but you have to have those conversations with your daughters, you know, because it's like, as mothers, we try to protect them as much as we can. And it's just like, we're trying to prepare them. But how often are men having those conversations with their sons? Like not saying that, because it's something that they don't have to worry about as much, you know? And it's just unfortunate. And I like when you said women of color, because I just want to go back to my PhD. The other part that I appreciate is women of color. And even like white women, they look at me getting my PhD as a win for us. And I absolutely love it. Like, I absolutely love it. They're kind of like, they say it like, this is a win for us. Thank you. And I absolutely love it. Like from women of color, you know, and even some white women have said it though, but I love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, we really have to work harder on that sisterhood. There's been too much division about, you know, like, well, let me get this first and then I'll advocate for you.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's crazy because that has not been working all these centuries.
Right.
We need to just band together.
Right.
And do it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this has been such a good conversation. And I know that you and I could have like hours and hours of other topics.
No, right. We'll just go to different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thank you for inviting me. I really, really enjoyed my time with you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for being vulnerable. Hopefully, people take a lot away from this conversation.
I hope so.
Children and their husbands and their sons. Yeah.
I hope
okay,
so.
Before you go, I want to do something fun, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to throw out a few words and you are going to answer, if you feel comfortable, with the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Well, if you say something
sometimes.
Let me know if I have to edit. Okay. Love.
Love? This is hard.
Is it?
Yes. No, I just like when you said love, I thought of like your heart. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Adventure.
Zip lining.
Okay. All right. Family.
My Lumpkin crew.
Aww.
Yeah. It's funny because, sorry to cut you off, but that was one of the things that I said, like that makes me happy. Because we are a close-knit group, the four of us. And again, not to like go off the thing, but like based off of my childhood and the peace that's in this house, like these are my people.
That's cool. Yes, that's awesome. Now, if you could give 15-year-old Tunisia some advice, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that she's awesome. I would tell her to love herself. And I would tell her that to keep pushing, because I just learned to love myself probably a year ago.
That's great advice. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Tunisia, for joining me, for sharing. And if there are people who are interested in reaching out to you, where can they reach out to?
They can send me an email. Sorry, everybody. I really need to up my social media game. So just bear with me. But if you do want to reach out, you can send me an email to tlacy7, that's TLACY7 @hotmail.com. So if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, if you just want some encouragement, I am here to support you. I am very transparent. I'm very vulnerable. And so if you want to have conversations that you may not even be comfortable discussing with other people, I am a judgment-free zone. So reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.
I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Tunisia. If you have questions, if you're feeling like maybe you need to get some resources, don't be afraid to reach out to her. And as you see, she was very, very open. And thank you so much for tuning in once again.
Hey, did you like that episode? If you did, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you may be listening and write a review. If you want more tips or some behind-the-scenes videos, make sure to follow my mom at Dalitalks on Instagram. You can turn on notifications for her posts and stories as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. See you next time.